Silence is one of the most powerful forces in human relationships, yet it's often misunderstood. We live in a world where communication is constant. Text messages, phone calls, social media updates, and instant responses. People have become so accustomed to immediate engagement that they rarely take the time to reflect. But when you remove yourself from the noise, when you stop talking, stop explaining, and stop chasing, you create an undeniable shift. That shift forces a man to do something he may not have done before. When you are always available, always explaining, always reaching out, there is no urgency, no need for him to stop and truly consider what is happening. Your words fill the space, leaving him with no reason to evaluate his actions. But the moment you go silent, that space becomes empty, and in that emptiness, he is left with his thoughts. He is left with questions that he can no longer ignore. He begins to replay past conversations, wondering what he missed. He starts to think about your value, about the role you played in his life, about what has changed. This is human nature. People don't appreciate things that are always within reach. They don't question the presence of something until it's gone. Think about the air you breathe. It's there, constant, unnoticed. But take it away, and suddenly, it's all you can think about. The same principle applies to relationships. When you stop talking, when you step back, a man is forced to feel the absence of your presence. Now, reflection is not just about realizing what has been lost. It's also about understanding what went wrong. When you are always talking, always explaining your side, always trying to fix things, he has no reason to self-examine. He doesn't need to think deeply about his actions because you are doing all the work for him. But when you stop, that's when the real introspection begins. He starts asking himself, did I take her for granted? Did I miss the signs? Was I too comfortable? These are the thoughts that lead to action, to change, to realization. And not just about you, but about himself. Because sometimes a man doesn't see his own shortcomings until he has to sit with them in silence. The power of silence is that it shifts the dynamic. When you're constantly talking, you are in a position of pursuit. You are trying to explain, trying to fix, trying to be understood. But when you stop, when you remove your energy, the roles reverse. Suddenly it's him who has to figure things out. It's him who has to decide whether he values you enough to step up or whether he's willing to let you go. And here's the thing, this isn't about playing games. This isn't about manipulation. This is about allowing space for clarity. Because when you stop talking, you also give yourself the opportunity to reflect. You begin to see things from a different perspective. You realize how much effort you were putting in, how much energy you were investing, and in that silence, you may find that you were giving far more than you were receiving. Silence also reveals the truth. If a man truly values you, if he truly cares, your silence will wake him up. It will push him to take action, to reach out, to make things right. But if he doesn't, then your silence has just given you your answer. It has shown you exactly where you stand. This is why silence is so powerful. It is not passive. It is not weakness. It is a strategy for truth. When you stop talking, you create the space needed for a man to recognize your worth. You create the opportunity for him to step up. You create the environment where real decisions are made. And most importantly, you create the chance for clarity, both for him and for yourself. Human beings are wired to respond to shifts in dynamics. When something that was once present disappears or changes, it triggers a reaction. This is particularly true in relationships, where familiarity can lead to complacency. When you create emotional distance by stepping back, it forces a man to confront the reality of your absence. It challenges him in a way that comfort never could. Most people operate within a certain level of predictability. When a man is used to you always being there, always responding, always available, he takes that presence for granted. It becomes part of his routine. He doesn't need to think about it. He doesn't need to make an effort to keep you there because in his mind, you are already locked in. But the moment you withdraw, the moment you stop initiating, something in his subconscious is triggered. He begins to feel a shift and unease because something that was once constant is no longer guaranteed. This discomfort forces him to acknowledge the role you played in his life. Before, he may not have actively thought about your presence, but now, in your absence, he can't help but notice what's missing. This is how emotional distance creates an internal conflict. He now has to decide whether he will take action or let you slip away. There's a reason people say you don't truly appreciate something until it's gone. It's not that people are incapable of valuing things in the present. It's that loss creates clarity. When something is always available, the mind assumes it will always be there. But the moment that availability is removed, there's a sudden urgency. He starts to wonder, what happened? Did I do something wrong? Why isn't she reaching out? These questions are the first step toward action. The emotional shift also plays on a deeper psychological level. Many men are naturally wired to respond to challenges. They may not realize the importance of something until they feel like they're at risk of losing it. When you step back and create that emotional distance, it forces him into a position where he has to make a move. He can no longer sit back and assume things will go back to the way they were. He either has to step up or watch you fade away. And this is where the real test happens. Because not every man will react the same way. Some will immediately recognize what's happening and fight to reconnect. Others will remain passive, thinking the silence is temporary, that you'll eventually come back. And then there are those who will do nothing at all, revealing their true level of investment in the relationship. For the man who truly cares, that emotional distance will be a wake-up call. It will create an urgency within him. He will start noticing the things he overlooked before, the little ways you showed up for him, the effort you put in, the energy you brought to his life. He will realize that what he had wasn't just a convenience, it was a privilege. And that realization will push him to act. But here's the key. The distance has to be real. If you pull back but constantly check in, constantly give hints that you're still there, you're not actually creating emotional space. You're still giving him a safety net. True emotional distance means fully stepping back. No reaching out, no subtle reminders of your presence. It means allowing the space for him to genuinely feel your absence. This space does something else as well. It gives him the opportunity to reflect on his own feelings. Sometimes, men don't even realize how much they care about someone until they feel the void. When you remove your energy, he has to ask himself, do I miss her or was I just comfortable? Do I want to fix this or was I just enjoying the attention? These are the kinds of questions that lead to real clarity, not just for him, but for you as well. And it's not just about longing, it's about respect. Emotional distance forces a man to consider whether he values you enough to take action. It makes him recognize that you are not an option, but a choice that he has to make. The way he responds to this distance will tell you everything you need to know. Because when something truly matters to someone, they don't let it slip away without a fight. In every relationship dynamic, power is not about control, it's about influence. The person who cares less often holds the most leverage. Not because they are indifferent, but because they are not dependent on the other person's validation. When you stop talking to a man, when you withdraw your attention and energy, the balance of power shifts. You reclaim your position, and suddenly, you are no longer the one seeking reassurance, approval, or commitment. You become the one who dictates the next move. This shift happens because attention is a form of currency in relationships. The more you give, the more someone becomes accustomed to receiving. If you are always the one reaching out, always initiating conversations, always explaining your emotions, you are placing the responsibility of the relationship on your shoulders. But when you step back, when you stop doing the work for him, he is forced to confront the reality of the situation. He now has to decide if he values you enough to put in the effort. The moment you stop talking, you send a clear, unspoken message. I am not chasing. I am not convincing. I am not begging for your time or attention. This shift in energy is powerful because it disrupts the comfort zone he has settled into. He may have been used to you always being there, always giving, always responding, but now he feels the void, and that void makes him realize that you are the source of something valuable. What many people don't realize is that when you constantly over-explain yourself, over-give, or over-communicate, you are essentially negotiating your worth. You are trying to prove why you deserve attention, love, or commitment. But your worth is not something to be negotiated. It is something that should be recognized. And sometimes the only way for someone to truly see your value is to experience life without your presence. This is why silence is so powerful. It forces a reaction. It forces introspection. It forces a man to make a decision. And in that decision, you gain insight into where you truly stand. If he values you, he will take action. If he doesn't, he will do nothing. And that in itself is an answer. Either way, the power has shifted back into your hands. Another aspect of this power shift is emotional control. When you are constantly engaging, constantly trying to keep the connection alive, you are operating from a place of emotional dependence. You are waiting for his response, his validation, his decision. But when you remove yourself from that cycle, you free yourself from emotional dependency. You no longer sit by the phone, wondering when he will call. You no longer overanalyze every message. You are no longer trapped in a loop of seeking something that should be freely given. Instead, you move from a position of needing to a position of choosing. You are no longer waiting for someone to realize your worth. You already know it. And when a man senses that shift, he feels it. He knows when a woman is no longer emotionally dependent on his attention. He knows when she is mentally checked out. And that realization often triggers a response. The psychology behind this is simple. Human nature is drawn to what it perceives as scarce or valuable. When you stop talking, when you remove your energy, you create scarcity. And in that scarcity, your value increases. He no longer sees you as someone who is always accessible, always available, always trying. He now has to work to earn back what he once took for granted. But here's the key. This shift is not about manipulation. It's not about playing games or creating false distance. It's about genuinely reclaiming your power and allowing space for clarity. It's about showing rather than telling that you are someone who will not settle for less than what you deserve. This shift also reveals the true dynamics of the relationship, because if a man only values you when he feels he's losing you, then the question becomes, did he ever truly value you to begin with? True connection is not based on fear of loss, but on genuine appreciation. And by stepping back, you allow that truth to come to the surface. The power shift also affects how you view yourself. When you stop talking, when you stop giving your energy away freely, you start to see how much effort you were putting in compared to what you were receiving. You begin to realize that your time, your attention, your emotions are not things to be handed out without reciprocity. You start valuing yourself in a way that demands others do the same. This is the ultimate transformation, because once you reclaim your power, once you understand your worth, you no longer accept half-hearted efforts, inconsistent behavior, or unclear intentions. You set the standard, and you no longer feel the need to lower it for anyone. And the man who truly values you will recognize that shift and rise to meet you at your level. When you stop talking to a man, when you pull away and create distance, something critical happens. He is forced to make a choice. This is not just about missing you or wondering where you went. It's about confronting what he truly wants. It's about deciding if you are important enough for him to step up, and in that decision, his true nature is revealed. See, a man's reaction to your silence tells you everything you need to know. If he truly values you, if he truly sees your worth, he will not sit back and let you slip away. He will take action. He will fight for you. He will rise to the occasion. But if he does nothing, if he lets the silence continue without making an effort, then he has given you an answer that words never could. This is one of the hardest truths to accept, but it's also the most liberating. Many women spend years trying to decode a man's behavior, trying to understand what he means when he's inconsistent, when he pulls away, when he acts like he cares one day and disappears the next. But the answer isn't in the mixed signals. It's in his response to your absence. A man who wants you in his life will make sure you know it. He won't leave you in doubt. He won't wait until you've emotionally detached to suddenly realize your worth. He will show up not just with words, but with actions that prove his commitment. This is what a real man does when faced with the possibility of losing something valuable. He fights for it. But here's the key, not every man will rise. Some will remain passive. Some will make excuses. Some will even try to manipulate you, pretending that they didn't notice your distance or acting as if they never truly cared. And that's the moment of truth. Because if a man does nothing when you stop talking, then you are the only one holding the connection together in the first place. Think about it. Relationships are a two-way street. They require effort from both sides. If you have to constantly be the one pushing, initiating, and maintaining the bond, then the relationship was never truly balanced. The moment you stop talking, the moment you step back, is the moment you see who was actually invested. A real man doesn't need endless explanations. He doesn't need to be convinced of your worth. He doesn't need you to constantly remind him that you are someone special. He already knows it. And if he senses that he's at risk of losing you, he won't hesitate to act. But an immature or indifferent man will do the opposite. He will wait. He will assume you'll come back. He will convince himself that he doesn't have to change, that you'll eventually break the silence because you always do. And if that's his response, then you've just been given the biggest gift, the truth. Because now you know where he stands. Now you know that his lack of action speaks louder than any words ever could. This is the ultimate test. When you stop talking, when you stop chasing, you separate the men from the boys. You separate those who see you as valuable from those who see you as replaceable. You separate those who truly care from those who only enjoyed the attention. And that separation is what allows you to move forward with clarity, with confidence, with the certainty that you deserve someone who will choose you without hesitation. A man's actions in your silence define his true intentions. If he truly cares, he will rise. If he doesn't, he will reveal himself.